And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Today's sea ice analysis showing starting to close off up here with the thinner ice concentrations here to the north and now along the eastern Arctic coast, making a pretty good push to the south here. And then not much change for the western Arctic coast, still wide open out there over the Chukchi Sea until you get back toward Wrangel Island. And for the looking at tonight's weather again, look for some areas of light snow up there for the North Slope Arctic coast, back down into the Noatak Valley and possibly as far south as Kotzebue. But whatever falls in this area will be quite light. Dry, light winds, central southern Alaska, increasing chances of rain southern Kenai Peninsula. More rain starts to slip into Kodiak Island later tonight, on toward midnight or after, and then toward morning up here for the Kenai Peninsula. Not much going on out over the Aleutians or along the southeast coast. And then for tomorrow, this front pushes northward, bringing rain, periods of rain the entire day. Kodiak Island pushing into southern Cook Inlet, so maybe as far north as Anchor Point, possibly. More likely Homer, and even more likely for Seldovia into Kamishak Bay, Bristol Bay, and back to the Pribilofs into the Aleutian, some light rain, dry with some clearing over the interior, and mostly dry, especially in the northern panhandle. No change for the North Slope and Arctic coast, as well as the Brooks Range, chance of light snow there. That continues into Thursday, interior, and looking really nice, especially over the northwest part of the state. Fair amount clearing there expected, right? Seward Peninsula, Norton Sound, Kotzebue Sound, and maybe some isolated showers here along the southwest coast to the Pribilofs. So that weak system, some scattered showers for the Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula with another weak thing there, and still easterly flow, leftover moisture, occasional light rain or showers for Kodiak Island up into the Barrens. And this system brings an increasing chance of rain, or probably will bring some light rain to the central and southern southeast coast. But winds on the light side. Speaking of winds for tomorrow, east 15 to 20 knots for the south coast, central coast, east winds 15 knots, north coast pretty light out of the east at 10. Lynn Canal, northerlies at 15, Stevens Passage north at 10, and southeast winds 15 knots for Clarence Strait, 2 to 3 foot seas over the inner channels. And for the outlook for Friday or Thursday, not Friday yet, north 15 knots, Lynn Canal, northeast at 15 for Stevens Passage, and east 15 for Clarence Strait. And here for the central and south coast for Thursday, east winds 15 knots, north coast winds still light, east at 10. And for Cook Inlet tomorrow, north to northeast wind, or north to northeast winds, 20 to 25 knots, northeast 30 knots, fair deal stronger there for Kamishak Bay. Gale warnings for the Barren Islands, east winds 35 knots, seas at 10 feet. Western North Gulf Coast, northeast winds at 30 knots, east winds 15 to 20 knots for the eastern North Gulf Coast, light northeast breeze at 10 for Bristol or for Prince William Sound. And no change on Thursday there for the Sound, northeast at 10, northeast 15, eastern North Gulf Coast, picking up the northeast at 25 as you head west to 30 knots out of the northeast for the Barren Islands. And southern Cook Inlet into Kamishak Bay, small craft advisories, north to northeast winds in these areas, 25 knots, 5 to 6 foot seas, northeast of 15 for northern Cook Inlet. And then Kodiak Island tomorrow, Shelikof Strait, northeast at 40 knots, seas 12 feet. Otherwise here, 30 knot northeast winds all the way down to the portions of the Alaska Peninsula, and then 20 knots as you get out toward Cape Sarachev, and from Cape Sarachev all the way up into Bristol Bay on the north side here. Northeast winds, 25 knots. Outlook for Thursday, variable winds, 10 to 20 knots for the north side of the Alaska Peninsula, Pacific side, east-northeast at 20, northeast 15 Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, northeast 20 to 25 to 30. And for Unalaska Island, north winds 20 knots. Sunamak Island, north to northwest at 15 knots. Adak and Atka Islands, north to variable winds 10 to 15 knots, and then north winds at 20 knots for the western Aleutians. And for Thursday, Kiska to Shimia, north to northwest, 25 knots. Now we got gale warnings here for the west central Aleutians and 30 to 35 knot northeast winds for Adak and Atka. And for the eastern Aleutians, light variable winds at 10 knots, seas 4 to 6 feet. Southwest coast, northeast winds tomorrow, 20 to 25 knots. And for Norton Sound, St. Lawrence Island, northeast at 15 to 20 knots. 30-knot winds out of the northeast for the St. Matthew Island area, as well as St. Paul and St. George. And for Thursday, Pribilofs, northeast 25, northeast at 30 for St. Matthew Island. Norton Sound, Yukon Delta Coast, St. Lawrence Island, winds northeast 25 knots, northeast at 20 for the Kuskokwim Delta Coast. And for the Chukchi Sea for tomorrow, kind of on average, an east wind at 10 knots, northeast 25 for the western Arctic coast, and northeast at 20 for the central and eastern Arctic coast, and then from, say, Prudhoe Bay eastward to Kaktovik, Barter Island, demarcation point, west winds at 30 knots. And then those turn east at 20 knots, and then northeast 20 knots for the central and eastern Arctic coast. And for the west side, northeast 25, Chukchi Sea, northeast winds 20 to 30 knots.